Cruise news time. Well, wow, it's finally happening. We're in the end game. It's all up to the cruise lines now. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Lido Loca. I'm your host Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. And it's about 8 p.m. on May the 5th. You won't be seeing this until May the 6th, and a couple big things are going on that I really wanted to take some time to talk about. In the cruise space, the CDC, they've really given the cruise lines everything they need to restart cruising. It's a big story that we have to talk about, but a more important story to me is our friend Don Terrace. If you guys follow us, you probably know Don, and if you've been around cruising at all for the last 4 years, you probably know Don. And if you've seen his videos from today, May the 5th, you know that he got some unexpected news regarding his health. Don is a cancer survivor. He is a cancer fighter, and he got some news today that is troubling. But he's hopeful, and we are hopeful with him. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Don. He's such an important part of the cruising community. He's a great friend to me, a great friend to Jenny. And so, Don, if you're watching this, you know that we love you and we are wishing you the best. And I just want to make an appeal to the people that watch this show. If you're somebody who prays, if you're somebody who sends positive vibes, please put Don on your list that his next health report is good. So, Don, we love you, and just wanted to take a moment in the show here and acknowledge you, and really to ask everybody out there to join in. And so that's troubling, and that's more important. But something that's exciting that we can be excited about is we really are in the end game. I told you guys last week that starting on April the 12th, there'd been an ongoing conversation between the CDC and the cruise lines that culminated in a letter from the CDC to the cruise lines outlining how they would be relaxing some of the restrictions that they had in place for the restart of cruising. And now today, May the 5th, 2021, the CDC has released the final technical documents for the restart of cruising. You know how it goes. It's a 4-phase restart with actually 5 phases. The cruise lines the whole way, they've been waiting for little pieces of information. Well, now the CDC, they've released all of the technical guidance that they're going to give. And they said in their statement that everything that the cruise lines need to restart cruising, they have it now. So what do we have? We'll talk about that. It's a lot to cover. I'm not going to go too in depth, but I'm going to make some key points here. And before we get into all the details, let me invite you to be a part of this virtual cruising community. If you like staying up to date on everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. And while you're there subscribing, please hit the like button. If you don't hit the like button, I will cancel your next cruise. Thanks in advance. All right. The deets, what's important here? What's important is that the restart of cruising can happen in 2 ways. There's an easy path and there's a challenging path. And the easy path was just presented to us last week and now codified in these technical instructions. The easy path is this. The CDC has said, look, if you want to start cruising and you will cruise with vaccines that 98% of the crew members on the cruise ship that you want to cruise, if they're vaccinated and 95% of the passengers are vaccinated, you can go right to the end. You can go right to getting back to paying passengers. You can apply for your sailing certificate. And yes, no more hoops to jump through other than making sure that you can attest that these vaccine guidelines have been met. This is interesting. Remember, the CDC, they have been given power by the federal government. So they're acting on behalf of the federal government to do things, and the federal government does not want to mandate a vaccine. And so the CDC is not mandating a vaccine. I see that out there in a lot of places. The CDC is mandating a vaccine. The CDC is not mandating a vaccine. They're giving the cruise lines the choice, and it's up to the cruise lines to decide what to do. The easy path is to have this vaccine guidelines in place that the CDC is recommending. And so if cruise lines want to do that, like I said, they can skip to the end and start cruising with paying passengers. Now, if they don't want to do that, there is another option, and the other option is the test sailing. They finalized the information around the simulated or test sailing. It's pages upon pages, but not much is different than what they released in October of 2020. Remember, that was another big document, and I made a video at that time saying that if you are somebody who wants to volunteer for a test sailing, these are some things that you should know. That video still applies, and that's still true. If you get tagged to go on a test sailing, please watch that video. Everybody should watch the video anyways. I will link it above. I will make it, I'll put it in the pinned comments. That's how important it is. I'll pin it. You should watch that video if you're thinking about taking a test sailing. Here's the big takeaway for the test sailing. They have to simulate everything about COVID. If you're a volunteer for the test cruises, you got to go through everything at embarkation. Once you're on the cruise ship, you have to follow all of the rigorous protocols. And during that cruise, they're going to simulate a COVID outbreak. So that cruise, your cruise will be interrupted if you're on a test sailing. So test sailing is not like regular cruising. So be careful if you're going to volunteer. Watch that video. All of those things are still in place. A couple key things to know about the test sailing, which is encouraging though. Cruise lines, so it's 4 phases. Phase 1, Phase 2A, and now Phase 2B is the simulated sailing phase. So if a cruise ship, it's on a ship-by-ship basis, which we'll talk about that toward the end. If a ship has completed Phase 1 and Phase 2, they can apply to go into the simulated sailing phase. And so the way they do that, they have to give 30 days notice to the CDC, and a big change on the CDC's part. Prior to the new guidance, they said it might take us 60 days to say yes or no that you could have your simulated sailing. They've committed to a 5-day window, a 5-day lead time. So if the cruise ship has been through Phase 1, Phase 2A, they can now say, okay, in 30 days, I would like to do a simulated sailing. The CDC is going to check all the paperwork and say yes or no, and then the simulated sailing can happen. And then at the end of the simulated sailing, there are some other requirements. People that were on the simulated sailing, they have to get tested after that cruise. That's part of the thing that they agree to. And if everything goes well, then that cruise ship will be allowed to have paying passengers. So you can see the 2 paths. The vaccinated path, go immediately to the end to paying passengers. The simulated test sailing path, a lot of things to go through before they get to paying passengers. And that's where we're at. The CDC has left it up to the cruise lines to decide on a ship-by-ship basis what they're going to do. So that really opens up a bunch of interesting cans of worms. Will cruise lines be one way or the other? Will a cruise line say that all of our cruises will be vaccinated cruises, or will some be vaccinated and some not be vaccinated? Because every ship that's going to start sailing again in the US, if they're going the test sailing route, they all have to go and do a simulated sailing, but not so for the cruise ships that adopt the vaccine guidelines. So it will be very interesting to see what the cruise companies do. Will they have a mix of cruises that are vaccine only and cruises that are going through the test sailing process? Will that decision be made on a geographical perspective? Will we see any vaccine required cruises out of Florida? All those things are yet to be determined. And so really the big ideas that I wanted you to connect to coming out of the show. Number 1, no longer are the cruise lines waiting for the CDC. The cruise line's not taken by surprise here. They've been working with the CDC since April the 12th very closely. They got that letter last week kind of telegraphing what some of this guidance was going to be. The cruise line executives not pushing back against it, saying that, you know, instead of saying it's unworkable, they're now saying that there's a path forward. And so now the ball is in the court of the cruise lines to get the cruise restart going again in the United States. That's huge, that's big. And then the second big idea I wanted you to take away from this video is that there are 2 paths. So we could quickly see some cruising based on cruise ships that are going to do the vaccine guidelines. And then we could also see cruising as cruise ships start to make their way through the simulated sailing process. And maybe you'll get tagged for a simulated sailing, but just know that that's not regular cruising. I know I keep saying that over and over again, but I know some people hear like simulated cruising and they think, oh, free cruise, but you may end up being a fake COVID victim on that cruise. So be careful what you wish for. Again, check out that video that I made. I will leave it pinned below. Let me throw the question over to you. What are you looking for here? Do you hope your favorite cruise ship is a vaccine cruise ship? Do you hope your favorite cruise ship goes through the test sailing process? Let's have that conversation. Thank you so much for watching the show today. Again, let's remember Don. This is Tony for Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.